We are recording. Okay, so I'm going to slip into my old school retail voice and say welcome to part 5 of 4 of BL podcast. I feel like I sound more newscaster than retail, but you know what? Just flow with it. But this is the podcast where we're talking about everything BL, from filmmaking to narratives to tropes, even to sex. And honestly, who knows what else? We're just going to let it flow. If you got an unpopular opinion, chances are we probably do too. So, saying everything you do or don't want to hear about BL, this is part 5 of 4. How'd that sound?
Hell yeah.
We're also going to be a little rusty. Rusty implies that we have any skills prior to this. I do not. My lovely co-host, do you?
Not with podcasting. I have recorded podfic before. I don't know if that counts, though. That was not speaking to anyone, just speaking to myself.
So this is where I'm going to learn more things about my co-host. I didn't know you recorded podfic. That's awesome.
You know, it's been a long time, but yeah, back in the day, I have recorded a small amount of
more
podfic.
Than one. Damn. All right, so
my deep, they have more internet history
than I do. So if they sound better, don't hold it against me. But
yes, I feel like we should introduce
you go first because I've been talking more.
Okay. Hi, I am Sinna. I don't know. What else do you put in an introduction? I'm a Taurus. Yeah. So, I'm
Sinna. As long as you're not into crystals, Sinna.
Oh, it's been suggested to me that I could mention what I do in fandom, which is a fair point. I primarily am a fic writer, but I have also dabbled in GIFs. We just start out controversial immediately before we even get to any one fucking thing about BLs. I'm primarily a fic writer, dabbled around in moving images, and I've also done some vidding. And I guess I've been in fandom since I was in middle school, so that's 20 mumbledy years.
Okay. I have also been in fandom for long enough to be taxable. Let's put it that way. And unlike Senna, I barely contribute anything. I do a lot of chaotic recaps and such. I have dabbled in fanfic. It's not been good fanfic, but you know what? I've dabbled. I'm old enough to remember LiveJournal. So, jot that down, youths.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all can call me Dé. So that's the host name I'm gonna stick with. So that's it's kind of us. And then today's topic, our starter topic, really, because we can't do anything by half measures. Senna, do you wanna tell folks what we're gonna be talking about?
Yeah. So this week, it's a little bit of a combination of origins of us becoming friends and only friends, because only friends was the context in which we started talking to each other. It's very thematic. Friends everywhere.
I'm not doing the clap 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 thing from the Friends sitcom though. Other controversial opinion, don't like that sitcom, so sorry to all you Rachel Ross fans out there. I know that there's dozens of you.
I have never actually watched that sitcom. It is a great gap in my pop culture knowledge.
I didn't watch it. I had roommates that, when it came out on Netflix years ago, binged it for a month. And just the clap all the time with the clapping. I was like, man, I should have stayed in the Caribbean. But yeah, Only Friends and the origin of Friends. We did meet via Only Friends. Do you want to kind of tell folks how we met and such?
Yeah. So I guess to give a little bit of context about how I ended up here is I, very, very many Western fans of BLs, started by watching Kin Porsche, right? So I had a friend, Mimi, who had been telling me to watch Kin Porsche for a full year, and I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. It's fine. I know it's gay, but how gay could it be? And then I sat down and watched it, and I was like, oh, this is gay. And then I was 100% in. So after finishing Kin Porsche, I was trying to figure out where to go next, and Only Friends was coming down the pike. It premiered not too long after I watched Kin Porsche, So I decided I was going to watch OnlyFriends, and we both started watching OnlyFriends, right? So like the first like 1, 2, 3 episodes, I had like no complaints. I was totally into it. And then right around episode 4, they started treating the way Boston was treated started to become suspect. And that's also when like fandom's reaction to Boston started to become suspect. And like we met because you had posted something that was, I think it wasn't even that like anthill kicky. It was just basically like Boston is not a bad person for having sex. And I think I just messaged you on Tumblr being like, thank you for saying Boston is not a bad person for having sex.
Um,
And
God, when you put it that way,
yes.
that's so sad. That's so fucked up. Yeah, if we could title this episode anything, it would probably be Boston Deserves Better 2024, right? Like,
A hundred
yeah,
percent. Like,
cause yeah, like so I've dabbled in BL since I was like a teenager ish, like um I was there when Gravitation was being printed, like released in English. Don't like that book, don't like that story, but I was there. I was there when America was still a thing, was still being print. They used to print anime magazines, all right, and I was there at Borders when Borders was in the mall. As a little preteen, like. And honestly, I probably shouldn't have been reading a lot of the stuff that I was reading, but we're not going to get into that. That's something for a therapist to work out. But
there you go.
I so I knew of BL for a very long time. And I dropped out of fandom for a while and got into some other things, and then like other fandoms. Like I've always been in fandom, but it flittered in and out as far as like specifically BL went. And then I had started to get back into it around the pandemic. I want to say like maybe like 2021 ish. So not at like the peak height
Mm-hmm.
when like Together and Tharn Type were airing, but like a little bit after that. And I got curious. And I had recently rejoined Tumblr at the time as well. So I was like, okay, like let me go through some rec lists and start watching things. And I had watched, I want to say Until We Meet Again is the first one that I watched. We'll touch upon that later, folks, because like
We will.
ideal, like I have thoughts and I have opinions in the way that only a New Jerseyan could. Um,
Yeah.
and then I had watched a couple other ones that were big on the rec list. Lovely Writer, which were some other ones. Tharn Type I had watched. I had tried watching Together. So A Thousand Stars was another big one. A lot of GMTV stuff, and I found myself pretty unimpressed with a lot of things. But I had stumbled upon the original trailer for Kin Porsche, and I thought it was really interesting because it was so different. And then I had like read that like it died. It was dead. It was DOA, like dead in the water. And I was so disappointed. And then like literally a month later, I had looked back on like a fan vid or whatever, and somebody was like, "Oh, it's back," and I was like, "Oh shit, like for real, for real?" Because it's so hard to find actual concrete information because there's not a lot of translators for Thai as there is for like Korean or Japanese and like anime fandoms or like K-pop fandoms. So finding concrete information can be really difficult. But yeah, it was back, and then they released BOC picked it up, and they released the trailer that has since like amassed 8 million views or something like that. Something pretty unprecedented for a BL show.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say one of the most beautiful tonal shifts in the middle of a like preview that's ever been. And it's something every single person I've ever showed it to laughs about, where they're like, "Oh yeah, mafia, serious, guns, blah blah blah," and then it's like, "But also gay sex." And it's just a very sharp, like left turn in tone, which I love personally.
Yes. So much so. Like, and I kept my expectations low because so many other shows I had watched had not really lived up to the hype, in my opinion. We're already losing people. We're already losing people. It is what it is.
It's fine. It happens.
But I actually got an account to IQ, and Kin Porsche is really my resurgence into fandom again. Like it was the first time I wanted to be a part of fandom and I wanted to discuss things with people, and I'm definitely grateful to that. That is pretty much how like Chaos Pikachu was born, was making chaotic posts about fucking Kin Porsche.
No, but like it's exactly the same for me. Like once I had finally sat down and watched Kin Porsche, which, to be fair, it was actually my wife who started watching Kin Porsche first, and I wasn't super paying attention. And then I looked up during the like auction, the diamond auction scene, and she like turned and looked at me and she's like, "Oh, did I not mention there's the whole cousin situation?" And then I was into it. So the way I watched Kin Porsche the first time was from the diamond auction to the end of the show, and then I swung back around and watched like the first three after I'd finished the rest of the
Wow,
show.
you started off with like episode. That's a heavy episode to start with.
It is a heavy episode. I was just not told about the fucking cousin situation.
Senna's over here
But
like, who is this dude with like these Angelina Jolie cheekbones up in here in the white suit, like causing problems?
right? Right? Like, I'm suddenly way more interested. Also, it's like, I looked up at, like, when Tay's face was on screen, and I was like, who's he? I would like to know more. I would like to know more about this, like, pirate bedecked, like, Thai street fashion pirate mesh guy that's happening right now. But point being, so I'd been very similar, where, like, I'd been very active in fandom in the past, and then it had been, like, a solid several years where I wasn't, like, I've always kind of considered myself part of fandom to an extent. Like, it's just, this is how I consume media, and, you know, it's like part of my identity at this point. But like, I hadn't actively been like involved in a fandom in years, and then I watched Kin Porsche, and it was one of those things where I was like, no, I want to talk to more people about this, and that's why I got a Tumblr again, was to talk to more people about Kin Porsche.
And we will definitely have an episode about Kin Porsche down the line. But yeah, it was Kin Porsche, and then like I was able to kind of figure out kind of like the motion of what is BL fandom, like how things come out, how things get made, like the way pitch trailers work and things like that. And I had seen the pitch trailer for OnlyFriends. Oh, it's so ugly. But I loved the vibe of
really
it.
Bad.
Like the original pitch trailer, not the one that they released. That was the actual trailer for the show. They filmed that with like two nickels and a dream, that original pitch trailer. But I loved the vibe of it, so I waited, and then they released the actual trailer, and it intrigued me a lot because I hadn't seen a show like this from GMTV, from this specific studio. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally give this a shot. And same, you know, first 3, 4-ish episodes, 5-ish episodes, was really into it. Started to notice things about fandom, same way you did about Boston. And I was just like, y'all really hard on this man for, like, no reason. Like, Boston's a bitch, but, like, he's not... That wasn't what I saw the complaints about his character. Like, it was a lot of, like, he's a predator because he's hitting on top. And I'm like, wow, we're leaping right into the predator thing. Okay, that's a lot, actually. Maybe we take a step back a little bit, like...
Yeah, it was, like, very much a moment for me where I, like, slowly it became very clear that, like, when I was calling Boston, like, a slut positive, other people were calling Boston a slut derogatory. And it kind of became clearer and clearer that there was this, like, sharp divide, extremely sharp divide, between people who thought Boston deserved every bad thing that ever happened to him, that he was a predator and a terrible human being, and he was only using Nick, and people who are like, Boston has a lot of sex, which does not make him a predator. Some of the things that happened to Boston, one might even say, are actually crimes against Boston.
I would say absolutely crimes against Boston. Fuck you, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely, like, absolute 100% crimes against Boston, and I will fight about this. But, like, that split just kind of, like, went whoomp, and it, which kind of, for me, where I was like, okay, I need to find the other Boston enjoyers, because I can't live like this. I need other people.
There were definitely vibes of, like, I can't live like this, because, you know, I'm very picky about who I follow on social media, just in general. Like, and it's because I'm lazy and I don't want to follow things that I don't like and I have no interest in. My blacklist is very, very long. Because I'll follow people I like, and then they post about, I don't know, like 911, the cop procedural show, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck about this show, but, like, I like them, so I'll just blacklist the thing. Utilize your blacklist, folks. They're beautiful, great invention. But yeah, it was troubling, really, to see that divide, because I saw it too as early as, like, episode 3, like,
yeah, like, as early as, like, the first, like, whatever the fucking like wakeboard is it
Yes.
wakeboarding? The like one water sport that all GMM TV
Yeah,
shows do
someone took
because
stock
clearly they've
out
made a
or
deal.
something.
Yeah.
Like,
So like they made a deal with the guy that owns that place. So they all end up there for like their like fun in the sun water date. And when he went into the bathroom, like after Top, like yeah, like from that moment, that's when I started to see like the very sharp differing perceptions of what that said about
mm-hmm.
Boston.
And it was interesting too because pre that it was lots of like, quoting, the Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, WAP song and stuff, but like everybody seemed to be having a good time. And then it seemed like as soon as Boston as a character became a threat to what would be like essentially like, Top and Mew's relationship, that was when he was like not just a hoe, like he was a predator. This is something that like, we've talked about separately many times is the dreaded branded pairings and how they hurt creativity, especially when it comes to GMTV shows. Because one of the things that attracted me to the concept of Only Friends was that not that it was just going to be messy, but that it was going to break out the monotony that I had seen in a lot of previous GMTV shows. They all kind of follow like a house writing style,
Yes.
and they all kind of follow like these very standard romantic trope templates. And you have the couple, and there's always like a scene where they see each other like across the room or whatever, and they're instantly attracted to each other, or the framing of the camera is always that these two are meant to be together, and then they have like some sort of contention between them to start off, little bickering, a little bit of courting, and then like the midpoint of the show is always them kissing. Like they always have like that mid-show kiss, that midpoint, mid-story kiss.
Yeah, like the episode 5 kiss.
And then you follow the beat. They're usually a grace period where they're dating. And then there's like the first time. And then there's usually like a moment where something occurs that makes them break up. And then they reunite at the end. It's very standard romance filmmaking. Like,
right, like to the point too where it's even jokes about this, right? Because it's like the episode 5 kiss, and then like the episode 11, like everything goes to hell. Like it's very rote. And like for me too, like talking about the way people were talking about Only Friends before it came out, it like you said, it's not just that it was messy, though. Like I like messy shit, but it was very much presented as it was going to be much more complicated,
yes,
than those standard story beats. And for me too, visually, it reminded me a lot of like other queer shows that I really liked. So it's like, oh, okay, it looks like they're taking some like visual inspiration from things like Queer as Folk, where those relationships also could get very messy and very complicated. So like the entire framing of it was things like, oh, people are going to kiss more than one person. People are going to have sex with more than one person. So it was all these things about like, I think you could still sort of assume that there were going to be happy endings, right? Because it's still GMM TV, but that like the road to get there would be very different from
the standard.
any other yeah, it'd be very different from anything else GMM TV had done. So like that's, I think, was like a lot of the excitement for me was the idea of like the complications of it, the not like the fairy tale romance beats.
Yeah, and I feel like those first handful of episodes, not only from a storytelling perspective, but also from a filmmaking perspective, are stronger than after that midpoint. Like you can almost see, like, and I want to say this is it's either episode 4 or 5, where Boston and Top sleep together, and you can almost see like
so
the
good.
very direct pivot the show makes after that, where it starts to become a lot more conventional. It almost feels like it resets because we get back to like now Top has to actively pursue Mew, which he does the entire fucking show. Like,
yeah, the entire show.
Top is a character that I both pity and find very frustrating because he has no internal personality. He exists,
yes,
like he had a personality, and he seemed to have the idea of a history and, flaws and such until he slept with Boston, and then anything previous had been erased, and his only motivation is to be with Mew.
Right.
And it's like, for fucking why?
Like, this is the problem about talking about OnlyFriends, is that I immediately want to spin out into 17 different opinions that I have. Like, for my money, I do think Boston is the most fucked by the narrative in the way that is the least fair.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do think Top is the second most fucked by the narrative, in that if I actually think about what it would mean for Top's ending to be what it is, I'm like, that's awful. You're dating a person who has clearly not forgiven you for something that you did. Your entire personality has become just making this one person who has not forgiven you happy, and that's happy ending. Like, you're dating someone who also does not seem to want to have sex with you or enjoy having sex with you, and I that's less that's less the writing necessarily than the way that those scenes are acted. We're gonna get really controversial really quickly, but it's like, that is a different kind of horror story. Like, that is also not a great ending if you actually delve into it just the tiniest bit.
Yeah, like those first handful of episodes, one of the things that I really appreciated about them is that they were edited in a way that was interesting. And the characters felt more interesting and less by the numbers, you know? I had been talking to someone on Tumblr about the confessionals and the use of social media and stuff. And we had said that, like, while we appreciated it, we kind of wish that the show had picked one framing device, because that's what they are. They are framing devices.
Yeah.
Should we explain what a framing device is for people who might not know?
Oh, yeah, I mean, sure. So, like, framing devices are just, like, ways you kind of structure your story around. So, like, a framing device, for example, could be like the confessionals, like the one, it's almost like the office style, like, interviews, right? Where they're talking to you in some way. Like, another framing device they use is like the time thing in Sans episode, where they're kind of clearly marking out like what you're doing at a different hour of a day. It's just kind of like a scaffolding that you can put a story on to tell it.
Yeah, a really easy example of framing device is The Princess Bride, where the grandfather
Yes.
is telling a story to his grandson, and the story of Buttercup and Wesley are what the viewers are actually seeing. Like, that's a framing device. It's essentially a way to tell a story within a story. That goes all the way back to, like, fucking Chaucer and stuff, which we're not going to get into because that'd be boring, and that's not this type of podcast. Like, but, yeah, I had thought that I wanted, like, just, you know, them to pick a framing device because I thought that would be stronger. I actually really liked the idea of the documentary idea because Nick had already expressed an interest in filming.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, you know, if we went with just the confessionals documentary style, I think that could be really interesting. And then, like, by the time we got to episode 7, I was just like, fuck, I'll take any framing device at this point because now the show's just boring. Like, they completely dropped this very interesting idea that I hadn't seen in, like, other GMTV shows. And I thought it was used pretty well. Like, not as consistently as I would have liked, but that's fine. I liked the attempt. I liked the ambition. And I liked the use of social media. I liked the podcast or the confessional aspect of it. And then it's just gone. Like, even the time bit, and then in episode 1, how they showcase all the different friends of this friend group, you know, and they break them up into these little categories with text. I thought that was very smart. Like, I thought that was very well done. You know, an interesting way to introduce your characters and get a lot of information across without expository dialogue, which is a problem I have with a lot of GMTV shows, is that they rely on a lot of expository dialogue. And it's boring.
Yes, 100%. Well, and I think also, too, in that first episode, what stood out to me, too, was that, like, these characters had, like, actual flaws. Like, I think a lot of GMM TV kind of mains don't really have, like, a real actual flaw that's a problem, right? So it'll be like, he's just kind of quiet and he studies too much and he's, you know, just like a jock. And it's like, those aren't actual character flaws. Those are just reasons that their personalities might butt against each other. So what I loved too is that in these framing devices, we also established that these characters had actual problems, right? Like, we immediately established that Ray has a problem with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a very, like, that's an actually serious problem. We establish that Mew's virginity, I don't know if that's a problem necessarily, but, like,
it's definitely a point of conversation within the friend
right,
group.
it's a point of conversation. And, you know, we established that, and even this was ominous if I look back on it now, that Boston has a lot of casual sex, which for me was like a positive. I was like, oh wow, I think it's actually really interesting to show a character on a GMM TV show who has a lot of sex, because that's very realistic to someone of that age.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's just not something I'd ever seen in GMM TV. So, and like that did feel new.
Yeah, it's ironic now because I'm thinking back to like that first episode, right? And there's that whole bit where Boston and everybody's got like the wristbands on, telling them, you know, highlighting like what their relationship status is, and he's hitting on somebody with a boyfriend, and he's like, "Oh, well, your boyfriend can come fuck too." I had thought that was like liberating. Like I had thought that was like a positive.
Same. Hard same.
And then you get to like episode like 8, 9, 10, and you're like, "Oh no, you meant that was a bad thing. You meant that as a negative. Like that was a flaw. Like that's something that we should have been like, oh God, Boston, that's so gross." Like, and that's why the first handful of episodes, like for me, the show really just goes downhill, starts to go downhill, starts to crack under its own pressure, like after Boston and Top sleep together. Because
yes, I agree.
It drops the framing devices, it drops the very interesting editing choices. I didn't like all the decisions filmmaking wise in those opening episodes, but like I appreciated the attempts, you know, I appreciated the ambition.
Yeah.
And it drops all that very, very quickly. You know, it starts to fall back into this very standard house style of filmmaking. Everything's framed very flatly. You know, there's no use of any sort of framing device. I think the last time we even see social media incorporated into the show was maybe episode 7 at the pool party, at that fucking hostel.
Fucking hostel.
Goddamn,
I swear to God.
Stupid ass hostel storyline. What a waste of my fucking time. But yeah, I think that's the last time we actually see when they send out like the party invite to that really busted Halloween party.
Oh, right. And they're like Facebook invites.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, that's not happening with people who are 21 in 2022. Like, people are not sending Facebook invites anymore.
Like, WhatsApp makes more sense to me because I know WhatsApp is big internationally and stuff. Like,
yeah.
You know, but like. Yeah,
why does the hostel not have an Instagram? Like, that's how they would
promote it, is on Instagram.
Right.
Like, your actors literally promote themselves on Instagram. Why would you not? Maybe Instagram was too fucking expensive. But no, Instagram belongs to Facebook.
Right.
Fuck. Okay, whatever. Like, the point is... like, the filmmaking of the show got very, very flat. And this is a consistent issue I have with GM TV shows. And I know people are going to cop me about not saying the second M in GMM TV, but I'm lazy and I don't feel like it. They're filmed in this way that the camera doesn't really move. There's no incorporation of camera techniques. There's not a lot of panning. There's not a lot of tilting. There's not a lot of use of shapes or lines or colors. Like, I see people talking about color theory and I don't see it really. Like, to me, wearing a red t-shirt does not account for color theory. Like, it has to be incorporated into the story and into the framing of the scene.
Yes. It's like, to go back to when Boston and Top sleep together, I think there is some color theory there of that scene is incredibly blue, except for where Nick is standing in the doorway and it's very yellow. Like, that I think is some deliberate lighting that has some color theory behind it. That's what that is. And that's different from that guy. Like you said, that guy was wearing a red shirt. And what does that say? Like, even looking at Only Friends versus something like Kin Porsche. And but Kin Porsche is actually doing color theory and storytelling with their costuming in a very deliberate way.
Yes.
Right? Like, you can see it very much in that Kin wears darker colors when he's being more the good mafia boy and he's doing murder. But when he's like with Porsche and going on dates and having fun, he's wearing lighter colors. Like, it's not super deep color theory, but it's something that's there. It is the costume is informing something about how Kin feels in a specific scene.
Yeah, and you also like to go to the red shirt thing. Like, there is a way to use red shirts in a way that means something. Like there is a scene where Porsche's returning back from his little K-drama moment with Vegas on the motorcycle. Yes. And Kin is wearing a red robe. And we know that, like, red in Asian cultures usually means, like, power, luck, royalty, things like that. And you can see that Kin is trying to assert dominance over Porsche in that scene. Like, and the camera is very specific, too, because it's tilted upwards. And it's giving them both equal power, because Porsche does not falter under Kin's, like, assertion. Like, he is like, I am not essentially bowing down to you. If the scene had wanted to frame Kin in a position of dominance over Porsche, it would have tilted it up towards Kin himself above Porsche.
Right. And even having Kin in pajamas is doing the same thing too. Like where he's like titties out wearing this robe and silky pajama pants, where it's like nobody feels that they're most powerful when like you're wearing loungewear. So
Yeah.
again, that becomes a great visual metaphor for like trying to assert power over Porsche, not feeling like you're actually able to do it,
Yeah.
feeling exposed, like his chest is literally exposed. Like there's a lot of symbolism in like that particular scene.
Yeah, and you have another scene where Vegas is showing the Minor family's hideout, place, home. Question mark. I don't know what to call this place. It's a whole thing. They having dinner outside and shit, like in the Thai heat. Like, more power to you. But he's wearing like a red velvet shirt. He is the only one in that scene wearing red. Like,
yes.
And when he's sitting at the table, there's a shot overhead of the table, and the lines of that scene direct your eye towards Vegas at the head of the table. Like, if you were to draw lines over that scene, like, you know, like red lines, and I might do this just to prove my point, you would see that everybody, the way they're sitting, are all pointing to Vegas, and then like even like the trees and the buildings are also leading your eye towards Vegas, because he is the dominating force in that scene. So when we talk about color theory, or when we talk about framing, we talk about rule of thirds or anything like this, like when we talk about cinematography in general, like we're talking about all the different components of a scene, not just like the singular shot, like that singular photograph, but like all the different components that make up a scene and what it means for the story. Like,
yeah.
And sometimes it don't mean nothing. Like, side tangent, but like I love Ridley Scott and I don't like Ridley Scott as a director. Like, the man knows how to direct, but sometimes he's veering off way too like just into wild places. But one of my favorite things that on his recent press tour for Napoleon, an interviewer was like, hey, like the French are kind of on the way you filmed Napoleon and the story of Napoleon, and he was like, what do they know? He was like, fuck the French. I don't know, what do they know? And then the interviewer was like, well, historians kind of have an issue with the movie Napoleon too. And he was like, were they there? Were they there? How do they know that he didn't do this? And they were like, well, you had him blow up the pyramids in Egypt. And Ridley was just like, yeah, it looked cool. Like, and sometimes it's just that simple. Like, sometimes a director just rolls up and he's like, you know what? I'm going to blow up some fake pyramids today because it looks cool. And the assistant director is like, I don't think that happened in history. And Ridley is like, it's not about history, though. It's about what I want.
It's about the vibe.
It's about the vibe. He was like, it looks cool, so blow them up. Get on the screen, Joaquin Phoenix. We're going to blow up some fake pyramids today.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, some things can just be done for vibes, and then some things can be done purposely for story. Like, to release credit, like Gladiator, there's a lot of purposeful things in the story,
Oh, yeah.
And then he's old now, and he's cranky, and he just wants to vibe. Like, so he's probably a little less concerned. But, like, to go back to Only Friends, I don't see that. I don't see either. Like, we had a vibe, and we had purpose in those first handful of episodes. And then we lost the purpose, and then we slowly lost the vibes. Or the vibes got really fucking rancid.
Yeah. Well, and, like, so, shocking no one, I am a Boston enjoyer, and thus a Boston and Nick enjoyer. And one of the things I really liked about some of their earlier scenes is how they were framed really interestingly, right? The first time when they're, like, having sex in Nick's family's electronics shop, there's, like, a lot of kind of, like, the camera's kind of back and down a little bit, like, making it feel, I guess, like, kind of emphasizing the, like transgressive nature of this, of, like, oh, okay, this is, like, the lead up to this is, like, I left a, like, naked selfie after jerking off to your naked selfies on your phone, and you were into that. So we're already on kind of, like, very transgressive ground. So now we're going to have sex in this, like, publicly open store where I've turned off the lights, but I've not, like, locked the front door or anything like that. So, like, that, like, element of danger. And then you see it too with, like, I love the shot when they're, like, Boston, like kind of slams Nick into the wall underneath the, like, antelope stuffed head, like, looking at them from, like, over top.
That was a good shot.
Yeah, like, there are a lot of, and I think sometimes, like, to an extent, that's what makes the back half of the show so disappointing is that there were so many things in the early episodes that I really liked. And like even things that if I didn't think they worked perfectly, I thought they were still interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like if you watch a lot of different types of media and you engage with a lot of different types of media across the board and different mediums too. Like you start to pick up the language, but you also start to appreciate like when things are made within a budget essentially. Like because let's not front, like we all know that a lot of these shows, these Thai BLs, are made on a very tight budget. Like you can just tell.
Yes.
Honestly, even like non-BL Thai shows tend to be made on a budget. Like Girl from Nowhere season 1 is very clearly made on a very tight budget. While there are parts that look cheap, the storytelling still works because they are working to be more creative because they are working within such a small budget. Note, season 2 of Girl from Nowhere was financed by Netflix, and I don't think it's nearly as compelling as season 1. It definitely looks better. It's sleeker, you know, but it's also more violent in a way that I find is not as thoughtful. You know, I don't mind violence in my media. I'm a slasher fan. Every year when Halloween rolls around, I wait for those like Ghostface, Mike Myers, Freddy Krueger, you know, Jason videos to drop with like the Backstreet Boys playing in the background and shit. That's my jam. But like, if I'm gonna watch something that has a compelling point in horror, which Girl from Nowhere is definitely like a horror show, I want the violence to have at least a little bit of thought to it. And season 2 just doesn't. And it's one of those things where like you've been given money and you're kind of losing the plot a little bit. There's a couple decent episodes in season 2, but most of it is just garbage. But it looks prettier than season 1. But it's like, that doesn't always mean more, you know?
Yeah. Well, like, even with OnlyFriends, like, one of the things I remember talking, like, very early when we started talking, is, like, how the credits really stood out among other GMM TV shows. Like, even other GMM TV shows that I like I quite like Bad Buddy. The credits are not anything special. Like, but, like, the credits for OnlyFriends really stuck out. Like, there was a very clear, like, aesthetic vibe. And, like, there was very much a tone and, like, these choices to have them on beds and everyone's giving you bedroom eyes. Like, it set such a mood for what the show was. It felt like the first 3 or 4 episodes were backing up those choices. And then after that, like, the credits almost became, like, discordant with what the actual show
It felt like false advertising.
Exactly.
It felt like someone was trying to feed me, like, homemade empanadillas. And then they showed up with, like, Taco Bell. And I'm like, this is not Papi's recipe for empanadas. What did you just try to sell me? Like, I'd be mad as hell if that ever happened to me, like, in real life. So no one do that to me. So I guess we should talk about, like, what exactly in that back half is an issue.
Okay.
Because I feel like we've talked a lot about what worked for, like, the first half, things that we liked, and, you know, where the dissonance in the two started to occur. But, like, specifically, like, in the back half, one, we definitely got to talk about Boston crimes. Specifically, crimes 100%. Against Boston.
Crimes against Boston, 100%. What kind of made this, like, especially frustrating as a viewer is that part of fandom, like me and you and a lot of those, we identified by, like, episode 4 or 5 that the way Boston was being treated, it was not it. Did not feel like a deliberate choice that was going to be interrogated later. It very much just felt like this narrative agrees that Boston is a shitty person for having a bunch of sex.
And so does your cat, Sinna.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Loki. But like, watching it, the other, like, a lot of other people were very much doing this, like, trust JoJo thing. Like, I have, like, a Pavlovian reaction to that phrase now, where they were like, no, it's JoJo. He's going to interrogate it. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be different. And for me, I was like, I don't think so. Like, I just don't see it happening.
I've never felt worse about being right.
Right.
Like I'm the type of petty person that likes to be right when people tell me I'm wrong, but I didn't want to be right about this. But we called that. Like, what we were talking, I think, by episode, like, 11, and we were like, God, we hope he just doesn't get hate crimed. Like,
Yeah,
we were
we were
like,
I literally hope he doesn't die.
we were like, we like, don't pull like a '90s Hays Code on us and have him like die tragically as redemption to like save Nick from getting ran over by a fucking car. Like,
oh my god! For the back half, for me, I have issues with actually all of the couples. My biggest issues are with Boston and Nick, and with Boston specifically. So, like, the big obvious thing is that Boston is recorded having sex without his consent or knowledge multiple times, and then these recordings are used against him to blackmail him, and these characters don't even ever apologize for it. It is never at one point ever treated like a very serious like crime or a very serious violation or something that was not morally justified. It was very much like, yeah, absolutely, like if you fuck around, this is what's going to happen.
yeah. I knew that that was going to happen. I want to say right after like Mew's whole toe dip into being a bad bitch, like his, what did fans call it? His Taylor Swift era, and I'm like, well, that's apt because
His
she's not a bad bitch either. Yeah. You know, like her whole villain era lasted one album cycle, and similarly, Mew's whole villain era lasted one episode. And
he didn't even wear the fucking booty shorts, which is
that pisses
might
me
be the
off.
thing that annoys me the most about the Halloween party. Is that Mew was like, I'm a bad bitch. And I'm like, then you fucking put on the Harley Quinn booty shorts, dude. Like, back it up. Don't wear your fucking, like, school slacks.
It's just
with your Harley Quinn costume. Like,
Michael's
no.
Arts and Craft khakis with the belt included with Daddy's Little Monster. Fuck out of here. Like, some bullshit. Like, I understand that this is like, we're all throwing our costumes together, you know, last minute or whatever. But, like, no one.
But if you went out and bought the Daddy's Little Monster shirt, there were a pair of booty shorts hanging up on the rack next to that shirt.
Absolutely a pair of
sequin booty shorts. You got the collar that says pudding. Like, you could have gotten the booty shorts.
It feels so indicative, ironically enough, of the back half of Only Friends, the lack of booty shorts. Write that down. Jot that down as the hot take I'm making. That the lack of booty shorts are symbolic of the way the show walked back on its own fucking concept. And it got boring and bland. And that's Mew's lack of ass, like, in those shorts. That's it. That's symbolic. I'm telling you. Like, because it feels like, okay, fine. Like, you could say something like, okay, you know, Mew before the betrayal, right? Before he feels betrayed or whatever, would never have worn those. But now he's in that villain era. Like, embrace it. You know, go for broke.
Yeah.
Like, and I knew that the recordings of Boston weren't going to be important because they didn't hold Mew in a light where, like, that was a thing he shouldn't have done. Like, blackmailing Boston. Right. And people are like, well, he didn't technically Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah, he was sitting there with his dad having a conversation about a film that his dad was like, I want to see it. That's blackmail, babes. Like,
blackmail is, like, the threat of showing information that people don't want to get out. It's not the showing of information. It is the threat of it.
What else was he doing there? Like, if he didn't ever intend to blackmail Boston, why did he have to talk to Boston's dad at all?
Yeah.
Like think about it.
It was like, okay, like, you know, he's gonna blackmail him, but the thing of it was, the show didn't acknowledge that the blackmail material was taken without Boston's consent. Like, Boston is the only one consistently upset about the things that happen to him, and everybody else is like, yeah, but isn't this what you get for being a hoe? Like, isn't this what you get for being a slut? Isn't this what you get for being a whore? And it's, like, very, like, obnoxious. Like,
well, and that's what gets me is, like, Nick was the only person who was ever shown feeling bad about what happened, which makes sense as a character choice. Like, even if I loved every part of the show, like, yes, Nick should feel bad about what he did, but he was the only one who ever felt bad about it. But, like, Sand was never seen to, like, show remorse for the fact that he stomped on his own fucking phone so he would have the chance to steal this recording purely because he was upset that Ray still had a thing for Mew. Mew was never suggested that he went too far, that, like, even if he had been cheated on, which, like, not to get into the weeds here, but, like, you don't get to tell someone very clearly that you're not dating and then get that big mad when they have sex with someone else. Like, you can get mad about it, but, like you're the one who said this was not a relationship. This was a situationship.
Yeah,
thing.
And it's like, Mew having feelings about it, understandable. Like, him being mad at Boston, understandable even. But to blackmail somebody, supposedly your friend, and we'll get into the whole whack-ass friend group in a second, but to blackmail your friend with what is essentially revenge porn, because they did not consent to this video being taken of them, is a level of fucked up that Boston sleeping with top it just doesn't reach for me personally.
No, not at all. Especially with Mew getting the video of Gap, where it's like, you had to, this isn't
That's
something that was just handed
intentional.
to you. Right. This isn't just the recording, which I will say one of the funniest unintentional moments of the show is still that people listen to 2 seconds of moaning and everyone's like, oh, that's Top in Boston. And I'm like, why do you know so immediately what Top in Boston sound like when they're coming? Anyways, but like, especially with the Gap video, where it's like, okay, Mew had to go out, had to meet Gap, had to get taken back to Gap's place, had to start making out with Gap to get on Gap's computer and find this specific video and take it. And to me, like, the other ominous element of this too is like, if Gap lied about Boston being okay with being recording, then to me that means every other recording on that computer he was
It's
probably
suspect.
not consensual. So
Yeah.
you as a person who's a like part of this community, you are looking at someone who has dozens and dozens and dozens of videos of him fucking other people, and that was never mentioned. Like, there was
Yeah.
not any suggestion that like maybe we should do something about Gap. Like, it wasn't even like a thought in like the far mind of the show. Like, it never got considered whatsoever. And what kills me too is I'm pretty sure if you go back and look on it, there was at least one folder that was labeled Top. So like,
I'm pretty sure, actually.
yeah, Gap probably also has video of him fucking Top, but there's no treating the existence of these videos as something that's like actually unfair to the people that are in them. It is very much treated as like, well, here's all the hoes. Here are the dirty sluts of the group, and this is what happens when you have casual sex: is that people will record you, and that's just kind of like the risk you take when you decide to be gross like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing of it all. Like, because in fandom, the thing that I kept seeing was that the hypocrisy was purposeful. And that, no, 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 the show is going to call out the hypocrisy of these characters. And it's not going where, you think it's going. It's not trying to shame Boston. It's not trying to be slut shamey. And I was like, I feel like you're wrong.
Yes. Okay.
I feel like you're not reading this correctly because it's very, very obvious that it is trying to be slut shamey because there's no opposing viewpoint.
Yes.
And that was the thing. When Mew blackmails Boston with his own revenge porn, there's no opposing viewpoint to that. There's no other character saying, hey, like, that's kind of fucked up, right? And for Mew to be like, no, he deserves it, because that'd be fine. That'd be one thing.
And the thing that's also, to me, if you step back about it too, it's like, this video has nothing to do with Mew. Like, Top is not in this video. This has nothing whatsoever to do with Mew. He has literally just found it to hurt Boston, which he's not justified in doing anything if like Top had been there. But like, it is such a laser focus on hurting Boston as much as he can that ultimately, if you think about it, becomes a little bit unsettling, or like a lot unsettling, and like nudges into the thing we kind of brushed against, which is like, I think the biggest problem that the show has is that these people are not actually friends. We're told that they're friends, but there is nothing shown in the way that they interact with each other, or they talk to each other, or in how they treat each other that suggests actual friendship. And like for me, I contrast this with Playboy, which Playboy has not finished airing yet. Like, it's still in progress. So like, who the fuck knows where that show's going to end up going? But like, that show also has a group of 4 college students who we are told are friends. However, they are an extremely believable friends group. There are lots of little moments where they talk to each other like friends. Like, there's the one moment where like First is just being so sad about his heart being broken, and they're just flat out ignoring him. Like, real friendship moments. And that adds so much depth to Playboy. But Only Friends, 0% does this. It says they're friends, and then that you just have to take that as truth. But they don't back it up at all.
There's no consistent development, or even like supposed history. Like, the only characters that feel like they have supposed history are Mew and Ray.
Yes.
And they're also the only ones that get like any sort of flashback of said history in the show. And that flashback does a lot of work in establishing why Ray has been clinging to Mew all this time, essentially, right? Like, Ray was in a bad spot. He called Mew. Mew was there for him. I get the transference.
Yes.
But, like, how the fuck did Boston end up in this group?
He fucked Ray. I will. That's the only way that makes sense. I will die on the hill that Ray and Boston hooked up, and that is how Boston ended up in the friends group. It's the only thing that makes even the smallest, remotest amount of sense.
Like, legitimately, like, yes, actually, because Boston doesn't get along with any of them, even from the get. And I had originally thought, not to go back to comparing the opening episodes, but, you know, I had originally thought that, like, them calling Boston, like, a hoe and a slut and stuff was, like, affectionate.
Affectionate.
You know? Like, because, yeah, I've called my friends, like, you know, hey, puta, what's up? Like, and but it's affectionately. You know,
right?
Like when I talk about like my friends' hoe days, I say it affectionately,
right? And like it would have lined up with like in that episode, like they're taking fucking Ray out of the bar drunk, and there is affection there. So to me, I was reading it in that same way, the same way that they're like, yeah, Ray is totally trashed. He's gonna start saying that he loves us. Like I was reading it with the same tenor as that, but that is not what is borne out by the narrative.
No, because eventually it feels like the friend group almost resents Ray for his inability to deal with his alcoholism, which I both understand and don't understand. I feel like for a lot of fandom, they had already felt just instantly bad for Ray because Cow, it has a fan base separate.
Cow's face is like
and,
that.
Yeah, and like, you know, sad, rich, cryy boy and stuff. I get it. It's a vibe.
He had a dead mom situation that got established very early. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there was, oh my God, there will be essays being written about him on like the first fucking episode, and I was like, this seems like too much.
Like everything about Ray's character was designed to be catnip for hurt comfort enjoyers. Like that's what he does.
Like, and I get it. Cal cries very prettily. I didn't watch the eclipse. I don't have any interest in watching the eclipse. I've heard he cries very prettily. He cried very pretty in Moonlight Chicken.
He did cry very prettily in Moonlight Chicken. It's true.
I get it. I do get it. So, but like, there are times when the friend group just seems to resent Ray, and then times when, like, I do get why they would resent their friend for being an alcoholic, because it's if you've dealt with alcoholics, resentfulness is something that does foster after a certain period of time, after many, many years.
Yeah.
But there was no examination of that.
Right.
Like, if they had examined it in a meaningful way, where it's like, you know, Ray acts out when he's drunk. He hurts people when he's drunk. Because we know this via the show.
Yes.
Ray called Sand a whore. Ray, like, in his little call out at Yo's bar, you know, he's talking about April. He's talking about Nick. The fuck do they have to do with your thing with Mew? They have nothing to do with this. Also, you ruining people's good time. I came out to drink with my friends, and now y'all want to be the main characters of the bar.
It's like someone else's birthday party, too. Like, it's not even just like a normal night at the bar that you're ruining. It is, in theory, the dude that you love's birthday party. And you're like, this is the moment for me to start, like, unleashing the secrets.
And it's also bad writing because in the side scene, you see that he had already showed Mew the fucking recording anyway. Yes. So, like, he really didn't need to do all that. But he did. And there's no examination of, like, has that been a thing that Ray has done repeatedly, like, just ruin nights like that, and, or, like, rejected help and such. Like, we get a sense that he's rejected help from Mew, but, like, has Boston, you know, or Cham, like, have they tried as well and they've just given up? Cham has this whole thing in the Halloween episode, I believe it's 7, where she's like, you know, you always leave me and Boston out of things. Like, it's always just been you and Mew. And, like, that's an interesting thread.
Yes. That is a very interesting thing right there. But that's
never explored.
That's all it, it just exists there.
And the thing of it is, like, in the previous episodes, you could have built that into the story. You could have built that into the narrative. We could have seen moments like that. But you don't.
Right.
And, like, the show becomes so obsessed with the concept of branded fucking pairings that it hurts the friendshipness that is supposed to be your actual core relationship of the show.
Exactly. Well, and to me, this also comes up, too, in, like, the absolutely awful shit when they're, quote-unquote, dealing with Adam, where, like, there are moments when you look at Ray's face as Mew and Chum are going off on Boston, where he looks way less comfortable with what's happening than those two do. And if that had been explored further, like, if that had been something that came up where, like, Ray then went to them and was like, I don't feel good about that. Like, I think we're not being fair. Like, or even if he went to Boston at some point, even if just in the fucking finale, there had been a moment where Boston, or when Ray pulled Boston aside and was like, hey, I just want you to know, like, we did not handle things perfectly. So, like, you know, as long as we're apologizing to everybody except Boston. Everybody except Boston. No, Boston has to apologize to them. I feel my blood pressure going up thinking about the finale.
I'm about to take us a place.
Okay.
Bear with me. But if anybody's ever watched Lindsay Ellis's video about Game of Thrones, where she proposits about how Dragon Lady bad, I feel like it can be applied to the finale with Boston. Because with Daenerys' story, it's not that her becoming like a murderous fascist or whatever would have been so out of pocket.
Yeah.
Like, so unbelievable. So much as the way it was done made it unbelievable because it was essentially a speed run, right?
Yes.
Which is why it left people feeling really hollow. There was no... It went to point A all the way to point Y and left everything else out. Yeah. So, but the way that the show framed it was also that every other character was now less bad. Everything that they did was now less bad than what she had done. Because she has to be irredeemable and unforgivable. Yeah. And I feel like you see a similar thing happening with Boston. Because all the other characters do fucked up shit. We have Mew blackmailing people with revenge porn. We have Nick recording people without their consent. We have Ray calling the person that he's been in a situationship a whore, and then also cheating on Mew with said person.
That kills me that day. Like, the fact that people get so mad about Boston and Top cheating, and I'm like, they canonically established that Ray and Sand did not stop fucking when Ray and Mew were doing that, like, very pathetic attempt at dating. Why is that okay? Like, why is that not a problem for anyone?
We should put a pin in that because that is definitely to do with branded couples.
Yes.
So let's put a pin in that. But, like, yeah, we have all these other characters. I mean, Adam accuses Boston of assault. Yeah. Like, and blackmail. And then Cham accuses Boston of the same thing. And none of that matters. None of that is held accountable. None of that is acknowledged by the narrative. And I had talked about this before. Like, I had written a meta post essentially about how, like, it's the framing of it. Like, it's the way the scenes are filmed. It is where the empathy that the director wants the audience to turn to. And it is not ever towards Boston, not even once. Like, are you supposed to feel bad for him? His one transgression, really, on the show is that he slept with Top. You could stretch it to be that he also recorded Mew and Ray kissing. Like, those are his two transgressions. If you want to stretch it even more, and I feel like you might as well take yoga up while you're at it, you could say that, like, he led Nick on, which I don't agree with.
I don't agree with that either.
I don't agree with that, but if you want to do some yoga, I guess you could stretch that
Nick
far.
is very much putting on his own clown makeup in a lot of situation. Like, bless him. I love him dearly. But it's very much like shocked Pikachu, dude who does not do relationships, does not want to do a relationship with me.
Yeah, like, honey, like, come on. But yeah, like, all the other characters do all these things, but the narrative never says that these things are wrong or bad. And then it has Cham give Boston a really limp apology, or it just ignores things. Like, it has Mew basically say, yeah, you cheated on me, but that's fine, Ray, because we were never really in love anyway. As though the commitment is somehow less important because they're not each other's one true love. Therefore, it's not really cheating. So it's different. Boston got in the way of one true love with Top and Mew. Therefore, he's an evil slut who needs to be punished over and over and over again in the finale.
What also really kills me about Boston, too, is that there's that kind of like a sweet spot at the end where he and Nick have this actually very beautiful, like, mini arc. And I might not have continued, like, I might not have finished the show if not for this. So, like, the show does this thing where, like, Nick feels bad about what happened, and now he's, like, fucking around with Daddy Dan, which put Pepang in more things. Let Pepang kiss more dudes. Anyways.
Also, let him play, like, not a 40-year-old, because he doesn't look 40.
Let him play not a 40-year-old.
Like, his skin is so smooth.
It's
like,
so smooth. But, like, you have this absolutely beautiful, like, apology in the bathroom where Nick comes up and he's like, I don't expect you to, like, forgive me. What I did was fucked up. And I just want you to know that, like, you don't need to change. Like, you are just fine the way you are. And I like you for who you are. And you don't deserve any of this shit. which is poignant and beautiful, and also very funny to me imagining the guy Boston has gone to fuck just standing in that bathroom stall being like, hey,
Yeah, like my piece is still
yeah,
out, bro.
like because he can't go anywhere. He's like, I guess I'm just gonna stand here in this bathroom with my dick out. So you have that very beautiful apology, and that goes into like Boston taking the step to go back to Nick's store to hand his phone over so Nick can see that like his phone background is that great picture of Nick he took, and they have that like beautiful fantastic kiss with the conversation about like, why do I keep hurting people? I don't want to keep hurting people. And like there's like a beautiful growth there, right? Absolutely gorgeous growth. And then you see them working together. There's like the like teaming up to take down Adam, which was fantastic. That was very hot of Nick to be like, I feel like we can ruin his life a little as a couple as a treat.
I do wish the Adam confrontation went a little differently.
And that was where the ominousness came in, where like there's the tiniest amount of like, what you did was fucked up, and then all of a sudden Nick is like, but you are young, you're a baby gay, and I'm like, if you're old enough to be drinking alcohol and like having fucking one night stands, you're old enough to know not to falsely accuse people of sexual assault. This isn't like a point of etiquette. This is very much don't accuse people of doing things that they haven't done just because they won't fuck you again.
And this is where we go back to narrative empathy, too, because Adam gets more empathy for that storyline than Boston does.
Yes.
Because he gets that scene with Champ where he's basically like, yeah, I lied, but like I've been struggling and I'm really sad about it. Like, and she's like, I totally understand. Like, it's fine. You shouldn't have done that. But like, we all make mistakes. And it's like, whoa. This wasn't a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, he made accounts. Like, he publicly accused Boston online.
Yeah.
Like, Boston said it ruined his reputation. He could have been arrested.
Yeah.
The way the storyline is treated lacks any sort of gravity, because if they take it seriously, like with the Gap storyline, then Boston becomes empathetic. Mm-hmm. And we cannot have Boston be empathetic because he has to be the whore of Babylon. Like,
and like,
deep cut, guys.
Truly. And like, even in the finale, like, I fucking hate the finale. Like, we see them going on these dates. They have this conversation about, like, and in some ways, I think what should have been a really interesting idea of Boston being like, yeah, I'm going to New York, and I don't know what happens after that. But until I go to New York, I want to spend that time with you. Like, that's what I want to do. That's a really interesting idea. And they go on this, like, really cute rollerblading date, and, like, Boston, like, looks happy. And there's, like, this brief moment where I'm watching this, and I'm like, okay, so if they're not going to go the direction of Boston getting the apologies he deserves, if the direction they go is that, but he gets a boy who understands him and doesn't want him to change, which is what Nick has very literally said, you don't need to change, then I can live with that. But no, then that immediately becomes the, like, fucking making out with Boeing in the bar, which to me, I think is wildly out of character for Boston. Like,
it was also poorly filmed and poorly contrived because they make out and then Boston leaves, and I'm like, did they fuck? Like, did they sleep together? Like, did they just make out and then Boston was like, all right, guess I'm gonna dip, deuces, like, what?
Right. Because, like, especially the way Boston had been treating Nick up to that point, I'm like, I just don't believe that he would go through all of this effort, all of this mortifying ordeal of being known, lose his mind, and have to go kiss Boeing. Like, Graham is good looking, don't get me wrong, but, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like, Mon's hot and all, and, like, you know, I get it.
Oh,
like,
yeah, Mon, sorry.
Like, it's like, bro, like, no, and it's just, it felt tacked on. Like, I have my issues with Boeing as a character because Boeing is, he's a Mormon plight. Like, he literally is. Like, he is sent into the narrative as a test, essentially, of all the couple's fidelity for each other. And Boston fails the fidelity test, and therefore he is judged. Like, it's very Christian. Like, hate in the sin and the sinner, you know? It's a waste of Mond as, like, an actor.
Mond in glasses, especially. Like,
oh my god, yeah. Like, he needs to wear glasses and have silver hair, like, in a show. And I don't know if I'd watch because, you know, I'm salty at GMTV, but, like, I would peak if that ever happened.
Yeah.
Low-key, I would love for him and Neo to be, like, the side couple in Golden Blood.
Oh, it's not going to happen because, like, as we've talked about, GMMTV does not love us like that. But
they don't love us like that.
Until it doesn't happen, I want to believe that it will happen.
Right? Just wasting him away and cooking crush, whatever.
Right. And I think what makes the finale feel so brutal towards Boston, like so absolutely brutal towards Boston, is it's there's like an extra oomph of fucking him. It's not just that he doesn't get apologies for anything that was done to him, it's that he in fact ends up apologizing to everyone else. And it's not just that he and Nick can't figure it out, it's that Nick so hardcore, full bore, down to the bone rejects him. Like, rejects him so hard, he won't even take the picture. And I hate it because it's so brutal to Boston, who has done a lot of growth in this, like, little arc about, like, being honest about he doesn't always feel good about the sex that he has. He doesn't always feel good about, like, the way he treats people.
He's the only one who actually self-interrogates himself.
Exactly.
Because you don't see that with Ray. You don't see that with Mew. You don't see that with Sand. Like, you don't see that with Top. Because it feels brutal because it feels like punishment. The whole finale for Boston feels like punishment.
Right. And like and that's what kills me about it too, is like, and then Nick just is like, no, actually. And like, I hate this for Nick too, because it doesn't even feel like Nick in that final scene. Like, the Nick who goes to Boston, who says, like, I love you the way you are, you don't need to change. And then the Nick that shows up to this fucking sitting in a dirty ass alley where everyone else gets to watch fireworks, to be like, actually, I think you should just be alone because, like, you clearly can't care for people. There's no connection to that Nick with the one who said, I like you the way you are and you don't need to change. Like, that is not the same character.
At that point, it feels like a speed run through the standard BL tropes that we know of for GMMTV. Like, where they had broken up, or like they, now they're together, they've made love in, capital M, capital L. And they've courted and now they break up again. But because it's the end of the show, there can be no reconciliation.
Right. Because, like, the ultimate message here, to me, ends up being, like, once a whore, always a whore. So it doesn't matter if you start treating people better. It doesn't matter if you interrogate your behavior. It doesn't matter if you apologize to someone that you've hurt. That doesn't matter. If you are a whore, at the end of the day, you still need to be punished for being a whore forever. Mm-hmm. You don't get to have any relationships with people. You don't get to be forgiven. You don't get empathy. You get to end sitting alone in a dirty alley with a gift, with like a rejected gift in your hand.
Like heartfelt gift. Yeah, like literally the symbol of like their relationship.
Yeah, like you have to end the story with nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I want to point this out to folks because I've seen this take in fandom. Like, first of all, if you go off of Tumblr and you go into Twitter and you go into spaces like YouTube and Reddit and stuff, you will see that people were always against Boston. Very prominently so. Like, for people, because I've seen on Tumblr people saying that, like, well, the show didn't mean to slut shame Boston. That wasn't the intention. And I'm like, no, it absolutely was, because that's where the conversation about Boston is everywhere else online. In a lot of other places that I've seen, that was the intention. Like, and that's what people picked up. Like, the YouTube comments since episode 3 were already against Boston. And I know YouTube comments are garbage, but this is the audience. You have to really, I've seen people say that, like, Boston's ending isn't, quote, that bad because, he's going to go to New York and, like, this makes sense for his narrative and this makes sense for Nick's narrative. They were just never going to be able to work things out with each other and such. And it's not that, I want to point this out, because it's not that they don't end up together. It is not, I am not the type of person that needs my ships to end up together. It is what it is. Like, I'm from old school fandom, I need a coherent narrative, and this was not a coherent narrative, because it's not that he doesn't end up with Nick, it's that systematically, like, Boston is punished over and over and over again. Like, he drops out of school because of what happens with Adam, and because of the project thing, because that fucking hostel.
Swear to God. Like, to me, it's like, it's so indicative, because it's like, even before all the stuff, like the commentary from JoJo, like, I don't always, like, I'm very much a death of the author kind of person, but when so many people were telling me to trust JoJo, and then it came out that JoJo's like, well, villains don't need backstories, and I was like, I fucking told you the intention was always that Boston was just a fucking villain, and you told me to trust JoJo. jail for you. Jail for you for 1,000 years.
And again, you have to think about, like, what were Boston's transgressions? Like, what made him villainous? Like, he went after Top and he slept with Top. Okay, so?
Yeah.
Like, that's fucked up, but that's a friend crime. That's
Right.
not an actual crime. Like, let's think of the actual crimes that people committed in the show, because there were actual crimes, was Gap recording Boston without his consent. Nick recording Boston and Top without either of their consent. Mew blackmailing Boston with said, like, revenge porn.
Yep.
You know? Like, those are actual crimes. Adam falsely accusing Boston of assaulting him. Those are all actual crimes, and none of them are held to any sort of standard in the show. Like, and we know that the show will take certain things seriously when it wants to, because it took Ray's alcoholism seriously
For a second.
and sent him to therapy. Yeah, for like a hot second. And, you know, and it repeatedly held Boston's feet to the fire. So, like, when the show wanted the audience to know this person did something wrong, this person did something fucked up, it made sure the audience know. Only Friends is not a subtle show.
No.
I feel like people were trying to make it more subtle than it was, and it was never a subtle show. And it didn't need to be. Like, but through its own lack of subtlety and internal logic, Boston is punished because he's a whore, because he's a slut. Like, we're gonna get demonetized. Like, but that, I mean, that's the core of it. Like, he loses out on finishing college. He loses all of his friendships, really, because Mew at the end can't even pretend for 5 seconds that he feels any sort of empathy towards Boston.
Yep.
And Boston, that hug was so painful to watch.
Oh, God.
Because the whole party was painful to watch. I could barely get through it. Like, Mew's like, no, I don't forgive you. I think you're a fucked up person. I think you're going to stay a fucked up person forever. I don't think you can change.
It wasn't even just that Mew didn't forgive him. It was Mew going through, like, the charade of saying that he forgave him just to be able to turn around and be like, just kidding, bitch. Did you think I would ever actually forgive you? No.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be on Mew's side with that.
Right.
Like, we are Mew is supposed to be constantly the character we're supposed to relate to, because if we're going to take what JoJo says to at face value, like, you know, because the whole trust, you know, JoJo thing, like, which also bothered me, because I'm like, that's very Joss Whedon-esque of you guys.
Yes,
don't do that.
100%.
You know, like, JoJo had said that Mew was the character everybody was supposed to love and relate to. I did not. I did not.
No, me neither.
I didn't like Mew. And I didn't relate to Mew at all. I found Mew extraordinarily self-righteous, extraordinarily moralistic, and extraordinarily judgmental. If he is supposed to be the center point, which I would argue Mew is the center point of the show, he's the one that has the most relationships with the characters. Like, he has interpersonal relationships with everybody at some way, shape, or form, except for, I think, Sand, like, and Nick, you know, and... Like, if he's supposed to be our center point, then he is supposed to be essentially what the show is prescribing as the moral center.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
This is their thesis statement. Mew is their thesis. And Mew said that Boston can never change and will always remain a bad person simply because he has a lot of sex.
Yeah.
And that's the thesis statement. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. JoJo had also said on Twitter that they didn't go out of their way to make things like that intentional. But we all have our own internal biases.
Right.
So... it is what it is.
To circle back again to Boston's ending, because I've also seen the takes of, like, well, Boston gets to go to New York and put on a whole new life. The thing that kills me about that is I'm like, okay, but it's established earlier in the show that Boston going to New York is not like a choice Boston has made. His dad has told him that if he doesn't graduate, he has to go to New York and live with his mom. And by the end of the show, it's like, what other choice does he have? This is not like a happy new adventure. He's essentially been exiled. Like, he doesn't have anything in Thailand anymore. What else could he possibly do?
From Gossip Girl.
Yeah.
Like this is Blair exiling Jenny from New York, and it's just as ridiculous. Like, I did not like Gossip Girl, but I do know of that storyline. But yeah, like, he is. You're right. He's essentially been exiled.
He's not even present in the last scene. And I think people forget that. I'm like, no, in this last golden lit scene in the fucking hostel, which they should have let them still be theater students. At least the level of drama would have made more sense.
It would have. Like, also, that's just not a good way to run a business.
Yeah.
Like, that,
He cannot be present at the moment of, like, the culmination of the story. Like, his presence would ruin it. So he has to be exiled. He and Sand or not Sand, he and Nick are not invited to Happily Ever After. It's not for them.
Even though Nick actually contributed to the fucking Hostel project, Sand ain't do shit but badly sing and show up a couple times. Like, get out of here.
They should have like fucking swapped Cow in first role, because Cow can actually sing. Cow's the one who sings the theme song, so
which is a banger, by the way. I have that snaps on my Spotify. Like, yeah, that's a great song. Like, but yeah, they should have switched. I would have actually preferred that, because I would have preferred to see Cow and First challenge in those types of roles, like those opposing roles, way more. And this is where I feel like we have to come back to branded pairings. Like, I feel like this is a decent segue. Okay. Because why is Boston punished? It's because he sleeps with Top. Like, at the end of the day, you could point out the manipulation or, you know, the recording or whatever, but really, it's because he slept with Top.
The original sin is sleeping with Top.
Yeah, and why is that such a sin? It goes back to the branded pairings. Like, why does Mew hold Top and Boston accountable for that quote-unquote cheating when they weren't really dating, but he doesn't hold Ray and Sand to the same standard when Ray and Mew were honestly dating? Like, they had established they were dating. It's because of branded pairings. It's because of branded couples. Because Force and Book have sticker sheets, and Force and Neo don't. Like, why are Nick and Boston broken up at the end? It's not because of narrative. It's because Neo and Mark aren't a branded pairing. They don't have postcards to sell. And you can see where, because I remember JoJo had said that they started editing the show mid-show, which is fucking wild to me. Like, if you've ever worked on a thing, like a creative thing, whether it be a show or like a book or like a comic, you know that creating something midstream, like mid-release, like as it is coming, is very difficult.
Right. Well, and like that's what kills me about Top, is it's like Top is so flat after the first 3 episodes, and that's due to editing choices. Like, they were very like, that's not even like an assumption there. That's something they talked about, that like people's reaction to Top sleeping with Boston very much changed Top's story. And even like if you look at the way that Force kind of talked about the show, before that, he had talked about being really excited to play someone who was like not like uncomplicated good, to play someone who's a little bit more layered, a little bit more a little darker.
Fun.
Yeah, fun. And then they just like ripped all of that away because they had ordered 500,000 fucking Book and Force sticker sheets, and you got to move the merchandise. And this is not the kind of things, you know, dark nuance and cheating is not the kind of things people buy sticker sheets about.
Yeah, you can't romanticize the sticker sheets if like they're cheating on each other, which is why branded pairings to me are like, they're a form of fan service, you know? Whether people agree with that or not, you know, because I feel like there's a lot of debates about fan service in fandom, and the obvious fan service of like cuddling up to, you know, like the Mew and Golf type fan service is what people seem to have contention with. But to me, branded couples are also a type of fan service, and it can be beneficial and also very I'm not going to use the word problematic because that's an overused word and I don't like it. The internet needs to give that word back. But it can also be very damaging because your show ends up becoming about capital and profit, which obviously all these things are made with the intention to make profit, because you can't make something with no money. I get it. I'm not knocking that necessarily. But like, the quality of the show in and of itself starts to decline, specifically because the branded pairings, the sanctity of them, that's what it comes down to. The sanctity of the branded pairings has to be upheld at the cost of the narrative itself. Like, because in my opinion, a better story would have been Mew never forgiving Boston or Top, because that would make more sense. And him growing and realizing that, like, yeah, my first time and my first would-be relationship sucked, but like, I can find love with Mix, because you're Mixes now. Or like, he's on the set now, so...
Or even just like, even if Mew's arc had kind of been realizing like, okay, I have contextualized romance only through these novels that I love, and actually that doesn't work in the real world. That would have been a much more interesting like amount of growth for Mew to realize that like what happens when you can't control everything the way you can control what's happening in a book. It gets messier than that. It's not that easy. You have to talk to people. People are going to make mistakes. That would have been really interesting. But no, we can't go there. And to me, too, I think I absolutely think that if nothing else had changed in the way the story was structured, Mew and Ray should have had at least an attempted sex scene. There should have been,
Yes.
at bare minimum, showing them trying.
It would have made more sense.
It would have made more sense. Because otherwise, it's like, what are you even getting out of this, like, pretending to date thing? Like, both of you are kind of...
It's wasted storyline.
Right.
It's filler. Like it becomes filler.
Right.
Because their relationship fundamentally doesn't change.
Right. I know what it is. It's that you can't have Mew use sex in, like, a revenge way, because that would undermine Mew's moral authority. Even though Mew is in his revenge era, and even as a character, it would have made much more sense, since he's so hurt about being cheated on, for him to throw himself at Ray, you know, give as good as he got. We can't have that, because that breaks up two branded pairings. And, like, the most you can ever do is one person in a branded pairing with someone who's not in a branded pairing at all, which is, like, why Sand and Nick get the kiss in the camper. And as an aside, I know they played that off as, like, oh, there's nothing there. I don't believe that. Nick was 100% down to fuck. Like, Nick would have absolutely been rocking that camper. But this is also, I think, why Ray doesn't ever get his threesome, you know?
Oh, it's absolutely why Ray doesn't get his threesome. It's absolutely why. Like, it's again, it's such a waste of Mon. Like, you brought him on set just to be fucking moral judgment, like a moral test of fidelity, which I fucking hate. But, like, I've never seen a Chekhov's gun not go off as hard as in this show with that threesome plot. Like,
right.
Why even introduce it? Which is how I feel about Mew and Ray's whole would-be romance. Like, they get together and they don't actually spend any time together. Like, they spend a little bit of time together. Like, you see them at, like, the bookstore, but who is Mew thinking about? He's thinking about fucking Top. Ray's already thinking about Sand. Like, they are not actually making any attempt, so there's no tension. Like, we all know that they're going to end back up with their branded couple.
Exactly. And there's absolutely no drama whatsoever in them deciding this isn't working.
Yeah, and it's like, they make out once, and Mew's like, no, I can't. You know, for no real feasible reason other than apparently there's no chemistry, which I don't believe.
I don't believe either.
Yeah, Force and Cal have... Book and Cal have, like, pretty decent chemistry, I would say. Like, you know, they gave pretty decently with the kisses. Like, I honestly... Controversial opinion. I actually think that Book and Cal have more chemistry than Force and Book do.
I agree.
So we're gonna be put on lists.
It's fine. It's totally fine.
I'm fucking ready. Whatever. But yeah, it's like there's no tension because the show doesn't attempt to give it tension. Because, like, I can know where a story is going. Like, if I pop in Fast and Furious, I know where the story is going. Somebody in some car is getting shot to space. How? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Physics are a daydream. But, like, you know, and there's something family
yeah.
And there's something car chases. Something.
The Last Job. Like, yeah, I know where it's going. But how we're going to get there?
It's the journey, you know?
It's the journey.
It's like... Part of the frustration I have is that the journey in the back half is so predictable and so mean, honestly, towards Boston, but also towards Top, too.
Yep.
Like, he becomes this shell of a character whose only motivation is to get Mew back. It would have been something if it was, like, any means necessary, and he got, like, obsessive and weird about it. But he doesn't. Like, he's just like, no, take me back because, like, I'm tall and I have abs and, you know, I'll eat you out and stuff. And, like, it's gonna be okay. It's like, I'm totally devoted to you. And it's like, what else do you want, though, Top? Like, how did this affect you? Like, how did Nick's recording affect you? Like, how did, you know, Mew making out with Ray affect you? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And this actually goes back into the thing that drives me nuts about Boeing, is there is a fascinating story in the Top Boeing Sand thing, and we get none of it. And that's what kills me, because I'm like, that's interesting there. But, like, we don't find out how Boeing and Sand even ended up dating in the first place. Because if you look at them as characters, there's no, like, obvious reason that they would get along. So, like, how did they end up dating? Like, even if it had just been that, like, Sand very quietly has to admit that his type is, like, rich douchebags, that would have been something. Like, we don't know anything about how this breakup happened. We don't know what Top and Boeing actually did. So we still don't know if, like, Top, quote-unquote, stole Boeing, or if Boeing just left Sand for Top. And as it keeps happening in the show, you blame the person who the person you're not dating for what happened with the person you were dating, like the misdirected anger.
I also thought it was really funny how like Mew at one point is like, yeah, he tried to get back with, Top or whatever, and I was like, fucking when?
Right.
Like they've had one on-screen single scene together, because if they're on screen together too long, then like it's a threat to the ship. It's a threat to not even Top and Mew, and this is what pisses me off about the show in the back half. Like these things happen, and they're not a threat to like Top and Mew or Sand and Ray. They're a threat to First and Cow and Force and Book.
Yes,
like
exactly.
And I find that obnoxious. Like I don't buy sticker sheets.
Right.
I want a story. And now the story's been stripped down to its most base parts to follow a very standard storyline, and is extremely judgmental to the one interesting character you have left that's not following the script. Also that your fan meets can sell more tickets? Like, and again, that I don't put on the actors. I put most of that on the studio and the directors. Right. Like, because these are choices that were made. Like, if they had to follow the branded couples coding, like there was a way to do that didn't include just beating the fuck out of Boston.
That's just it.
And making the other characters boring in the process.
Right.
Because they become boring.
And like that's the thing that gets me is like the part that makes me like actually a little angry is not that it ended up being very standard story beats for GMM TV. That's just kind of a little bit disappointing. But whatever, this is GMM TV. They produce a lot of content very quickly, so there's not usually a ton of variation in the kind of content they make. Whatever. The part that makes me angry is that to reinforce just how essential and morally correct these story beats are, you have to take hit after hit at Boston. And like we were just saying, like it's not enough that Boston like doesn't get a reward in the end. Boston has to be ground down into the dirt and excommunicated from the friends group just to make it really totally clear that he is irredeemable. That's the shit that makes me angry.
Yeah, like again, there was a way to break up Nick and Boston in a way that didn't feel contrived, that didn't feel just mean and nihilistic. And super slut-shamey. There was a way to, personally, if I was ever cheated on, that person is, they're swimming with fishes. Like, there's no, my family, the familia, no way. No, absolutely fucking not. Like, my ma is built different from you's moms. Let's just say that. But there was a way to, like, get them back together, I think, that wouldn't have made them so boring in the process. I think there was a way to build Ray and Sand's storyline to be both more cohesive with everything else that's happening, because at times their storyline feels so fucking separate from everything else, where it just feels like First and Cow are in a different show.
The thing that always kills me about their storyline is that everyone forgets that like the big crying apology scene Cow has is not actually to Sand. Like, Sand is not really there in that therapist office. He's talking to, like, a chair. But we don't ever see him actually say any of this to actual Sand. And, like, of all the quibbles, like, that's one of the more minor ones. But, like, when people talk about, like, this beautiful apology, I'm like, yeah, it's great. It would have been better if the person he was apologizing to was, like, there. Like, that probably would have been cool.
Like there was a way to do that scene in a way where it's like he's actually apologizing to Sand and not some random therapist. Like the camera trick was cute, but like at the same time it's like, okay, but if I think about this for longer than 5 seconds, like it becomes less cute.
Right. And it also becomes part of my bigger problem. Like, obviously we've talked a lot about my problems with Boston's storyline, but like this also becomes part of my problem with Ray and Sand's storyline is like they do all this work to set up like alcoholism is a big problem, and then rehab is like one therapy appointment, and then that's like the last they ever address rehab.
Yeah, it almost feels like something that's tacked on instead of like actually considered.
Exactly.
And I feel that way about a lot of like the back half. A lot of things feel tacked on instead of considered.
Yes.
I feel like we've covered pretty much all the points that we wanted to cover. Like, and I think in the end, what I find disappointing about Only Friends is that it had potential and it squanders it.
Yeah.
Like, if I was going to sum up my overall thoughts in, like, a singular sentence, that's what it would be. Only Friends had a lot of potential and squandered it at every step of the way.
Yeah. And it's not just, like, in the narrative choices. It's also, like, they squander such great characters. Because I do think the characters on Only Friends stand out kind of from the standard BL pact. and not just Boston.
Yes, I agree
and
with
not
that.
just Nick, but like Sand and Ray kind of stand out from the BL pack. Like Mew, not as much, I don't think. Top, not as much, but like there are these very interesting characters, and they have very interesting moments, and they have very interesting beats, and like to see what could have been if it had actually decided to go full like relationships when you're in college in your early 20s get fucking complicated, especially in queer friends groups. There could have been a truly interesting show there, and instead it went like the same route as most other shows, which is like you're gonna meet your soulmate at 22 and you will kiss and then you will have sex, and the implication will be that you're going to live happily ever after for the rest of your lives.
You're going to have sex with this one
One
person
person.
for the rest of your life at 22. Okay. Like, and if you have sex with more than one person than your true love, like, you get exiled to fucking America.
Well, and like, here's the thing that gets me about this is like, for me, it was very funny to realize the fact that Nick and Boston have a lot of different sex was a big plus for me. So, like, Boston eating ass, I was like, yeah, hell yeah, like, that's something people do. Like, Boston sucking dick, Boston switching. Like, for me, these were huge positives. So to come to realize that these were meant to be, like, ominous warning signs of how untrustworthy Boston is, it really sucked. But the thing that also kills me about this is, like, so we've talked about this, how a lot of the times in GMM TV shows, the bottoms aren't allowed to move their arms. So during the sex scenes, they're like arms at your side. And looking back on it and realizing, oh, that was like Boston's first crime, is his arms were involved in fucking Top. Like, that was like the original, like the first step down the path of darkness, is he did not lie back and think about Thailand while getting like gently missionaried. No, he was in it to win it.
Putting that on a fucking postcard right there. That's the winning quote of today's episode. The GMMTV bottoms don't move their arms. Boston's crime was moving his arms while bottoming. That's, and like, I do want to give like a side shout out to that scene and to Force and Neo.
Oh, they killed it. I think that's one of the best sex scenes in BL overall.
And we will definitely discuss in another episode, probably in more detail, about like, you know, like sex and BL in general. But like, I do want to just say just outright that like sex scenes, and this is something I feel like people don't consider, they are much more similar to fight scenes than people would think. Because sex scenes need to be choreographed. Like, they need to be organized. Like, there's a lot of moving parts in sex scenes. Like, they are not easy to film, and they are actually very, very difficult to film, you know? And that's why I compare them to fight scenes, because fight scenes are also really difficult to film, and there's a lot of physicality in both. And there is also a lot of danger of bits getting squished in both.
100%. It's like with fight scenes, at least you usually have your clothes on, unless you're like Viggo Mortensen in that one Mafia movie. But like sex scenes,
or a woman,
yeah. It's like sex scenes though. It's like the you know the quote about like Ginger Astaire did everything Fred Astaire did except backwards and in heels.
Yes,
it's very much the same thing. It's like you're doing all the same things as a fight scene, except for you have like a sock stuck over your dick and like a pasty over your butthole. Like, that is, I think that is harder.
Yeah, the technical term is actually called cocksock.
Oh, is it a cocksock? Oh, well, now I've learned something.
Yeah, cocksock or cocksleeve. Like, I'm not even playing. Like, that's...
I believe you.
Like, you could look it up. It's one of the terms. It's not the only term they use in film, but, like, it's one of them.
Love that.
But yeah, and, like, groin guards, groin protections are actually a big one. Like, you know, because you're moving a lot. People's knees hurt. Like, and you are moving, you know, so you have to be careful. And, like, it's not just the movement that you're doing. You have to move the way the director tells you to, for like lighting purposes, for sound purposes, for the narrative purposes, for camera purposes. There's a lot of moving parts to sex scenes. Like, that's one of the things that I think people don't understand when it comes to sex scenes. Like, I feel like people think that they're either super easy to film or that like not a lot of thought goes into them.
Right. At some point we'll talk about Playboy, because that it's to my mind the best example of a show where sex is as important as any other scene. But like, even within OnlyFriends, it's like, yes, fucking in a car has a different connotation of like desire and impulsivity than like the last sex scene with Nick and Boston, where they are like in bed close up together, like they're smiling at each other the first time, like foreheads touching. Like, those sex scenes are saying very different things. And
Mm-hmm. It's part of the
exactly.
narrative. Like, these things are part of the narrative.
Yeah.
So, also, low-key, salty to fandom for never writing, like, a top Boston smut fic. Like,
I'm
what
still
the
mad
hell,
about
guys?
it.
Come on. It's right there. I think OnlyFriends is actually, like, a show that would be ripe for multi-shipping if...
If people weren't cowards.
That too, but also, like, if the show wasn't so hard up on branded couples. And you can see this reflected in the way fandom consumes the show.
I do genuinely think it's unfair that Ray did not get one threesome. Like, he wanted it so bad.
Unfair.
Ray should have gotten a threesome. He deserved it.
It's so sad. And at the end of the day, that's how I feel about OnlyFriends. Like, a lot of potential, and it just squandered that potential. Because I agree with you. I like the characters a lot. I like them more than I like most GM TV characters. Because they tend to be a little paced, by numbers. And these characters are not that. And it's such a shame that the framework that they exist in, like the story that they exist in, is so rudimentary and it fails them. Like, it starts off so strongly and then it slowly but surely strips everything interesting, from the editing to the cinematography to just the overall filmmaking and direction to the story and script of it in and of itself. It's not the worst show by any means. I have a lot of love for this show, actually.
I do too.
Yeah, it brought me some new fandom friends. It brought us here right now talking about it. I really like Boston.
I love
He's definitely
Boston.
one of my favorite characters in BL, like, hands down. I mean, I started writing fucking fic again because of this
I also
show.
started writing fic again because of Boston.
Yeah, because I was so incensed.
I was so mad about it.
So there's a lot of good to the show. It's just there's a lot of bad too.
Yeah.
Like, bad in, quality terms. I don't want anybody to think we're making any sort of, accusations or aspirations about the cast and crew themselves. Whether I like JoJo's direction and his fellow screenwriters and directors, there are things that I don't like, but, like, as a person, I have no opinion on JoJo.
Yeah, no.
Like, absolutely not. Like, it's not personal. No. It's just not. I don't view media that way.
The thing that gets me is that ultimately, I think OnlyFriends ends up feeling so suffocating, because all of these characters feel more nuanced and more complex and bigger than the story they are allowed to tell. And that's what kills me.
Yes.
Is the unanswered questions that are more interesting than hours that were dedicated to the fucking hostel, which I don't have very many positive things to say about Mew, but I do not believe that. I believe Mew is smart enough to have looked around at these people and been like, this is a bad idea. These are not co-owners of a business with me, whomst probably has a perfect GPA. This is a bad idea. These are, like, no. I think Mew is too smart to be like, let's go into business with, like, my slut friend that I don't seem to really like, my alcoholic friend, and then the token lesbian. So the one thing I will say about Mew is I think he would have been smarter than to agree to do this stupid hostel.
That stupid storyline. The only good thing that storyline gave us is all the pool scenes. I did appreciate seeing Boston and Tom
I did appreciate that
separately. It would have been more fun together, but whatever. Forrest is gonna die with Brooke apparently, so I'll never get anything interesting with him again.
And it did give us like 5 seconds of Mix. And I like Mix's face.
Yes. And just one more final point about the Brandon couples. That bit with Mix. I love seeing Mix's face, but I was so annoyed because I was like, don't tempt me with a good time. You've already lied to me. Because Mix, there could be a season 2. And I wouldn't even be surprised if there was, because the show has been very
I wouldn't
successful.
be surprised
like,
either.
if you look at the stats on YouTube, like, the show has been successful. So, but even if they did a season 2, what's going to happen? The same fucking shit.
Yeah. Earth is going to show up at some point.
He's gonna, like, play a character that hits on you for, like, a hot second, and then Earth is gonna show up and be like, I'm here for my person, and they're gonna fuck off into the sunset. It's so predictable. I will not be fooled twice. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Like, abso-fucking-lutely.
Never watch a second season. I say confidently as someone who, the second I saw Boston in the trailer, I would be like, when does it premiere? Like, when is it? Like, when can I watch this?
No, we must stay strong, son. We gonna get someone to just cut his scenes out like they used to do back in soap days, all right? Like, back when As the World Turned was on and everybody just cut out all the Luke and Reed scenes, okay? Like, we're gonna go back to our roots.
You're right.
So that was us talking about OnlyFriends.
Hell yeah.
So what I would love to see is if folks had meta, or fan art or fan fiction that they'd like to recommend about the show that's based on the show. By all means, please do. We are all about uplifting fandom here, whether we like a thing or not. I want to be out there supporting people who are taking the time to make fan works, because you don't get paid
Exactly.
in it to win it.
And frankly, sometimes the most mediocre shows produce the best fan works because there's the most room to improve.
Teen Wolf has entered the chat.
Exactly.
Though I do not like Steric, so jot that down. Pika's picking fights with everybody today. But yeah, no, for real. Like, if, folks have things that they would like to recommend for fanworks wise, we'll have our own. I definitely have seen, like, some great FMVs about the show. I've seen some really great GIF sets and such. I would be more than happy to link those in our description if you want to check those out. Give folks kudos on AO3 or a reblog on Tumblr, or like a retweet for anybody that is still on Twitter. I ain't calling it X.
No,
Musk can
I will
sue me.
not.
Don't sue me. I have student loans.
Line in the sand. We'll not call it X.
Check us out for, I guess, our next episode. What is our next episode?
Wait, there's a whole document.
Bones, cut this bit out.
Bones, leave it in. Oh, episode 2 is just going to be talking about like our favorite shows overall. So that's very exciting because I love to talk about my opinions. So now that we've talked so much about a show we didn't like, now we'll backtrack and be like, but actually I don't hate everything. There are some things that I do really like.
We swear we do not hate everything. Like, we are balanced individuals for the most part. I don't know. Some days, like, it depends. Have I eaten yet? Maybe I need a Snickers. But yes, so next episode we're going to be talking about our top 4 BLs. I'm really excited about that. I have some pretty cool picks, I think. I try to pick a little bit of everything. Sinna, I'm really excited to hear what yours are. I'm very excited
to talk about mine. Because I'm also, this is like inside baseball talk, but like, I'm also like, okay, we should make sure that we're not picking the same ones necessarily, just to have a broader scope. So getting a little bit deeper into it. So I'm very excited about that. So hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
We did it. Good job.
So
good job
cool.
us.
All right. Well, we did do it. Good job us. We'll see you next time, guys.
Bye.